Brilliance Audio presents Vagina Problems, Endometriosis, Painful Sex, and Other Taboo Topics by Lara Parker, performed by Terry Schnaubelt. I had just barely graduated from college in the early summer of 2013 when I received the diagnosis at the Mayo Clinic that would change my life in so many ways. Looking back on it all now, years later, it seems sort of odd to remember my diagnoses of vulvodynia and vaginismus, two conditions that contribute to painful sex and overall pain of the vulva and vaginal muscles, as the cherry on top of the cake that finally spun me into a dark oblivion. But that's exactly how it happened. I didn't have a grasp on the depth of endometriosis and the ways in which it could cause chronic pain, and even after I received the diagnosis, it felt like something that was in my past, and very much not a part of my present and future. However, I was still in some sort of pain nearly every day. When I arrived at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, a 12-hour drive from where I had grown up in Indiana, I was concerned about my pain. It had been increasing in the months following the laparoscopic surgery I had in the summer of 2012 to diagnose and treat my endometriosis. But above all else, I was concerned about where the pain seemed to be located and what was triggering it. On top of a swelling abdomen and general GI issues, my vagina fucking hurt. I was struggling to wear pants or underwear at all. I could barely stand to insert a tampon, and orgasming or feeling even slightly turned on was incomprehensible. The few times that I had attempted to be sexually active were disaster upon disaster, and it was this, above all else, that really brought me to a breaking point. For a long time, I was in denial about what was happening in my body. In the months following my surgery, I was fully under the impression that my endometriosis was gone. I had undergone an ablation surgery, a surgery where doctors remove growths and scar tissue with a laser or attempt to destroy them with intense heat, which has since been proven ineffective. And the doctor who performed the surgery had assured me time and time again that the pain I was now experiencing had nothing to do with my endometriosis. I thought I had come to terms with my diagnosis of endometriosis, but with reflection, I see now that I was able to come to terms with it because I didn't understand it at all. I naively assumed that the endometriosis that had wrecked my teenage years was in my past, and all I had to focus on was the present, and so much of that present was my inability to be sexual. I've always considered myself to be a relatively sexual person. Maybe it's the Taurus in me, or maybe it's just the way I was built, but I enjoy being intimate. Learning this about myself, however, was extremely difficult in the midst of all the pain I was experiencing in the lower region of my body. Penetrative sex has always been impossible for me, though not for lack of trying. But prior to my laparoscopic surgery, I had experienced intimacy in other ways that had brought me great pleasure. It was a combination of desiring this pleasure and my desperate wish to feel a sense of normalcy that made me feel so fucking lost when I realized I was unable to experience pleasure in the way I expected anymore. Having the ability to be sexually active might not be regarded as normal to everyone, but as a straight woman who was exclusively dating men in a world that is sex-filled, whether we acknowledge this or not, it was definitely my idea of normal. And at the time, sex to me was literally just the idea of a penis going into a vagina. This is probably because every man I had been sexual with up to this point had relied pretty much solely on penetration. It was also because painful sex and sex outside of a penis going into a vagina is rarely ever shown in the media, which is the basis for a lot of the world's knowledge about things that are otherwise considered a bit taboo for polite conversation, like sex. As the months progressed, and the pain I felt when I orgasmed, and when anything came in contact with my vulva in general became ever more present, my distress around this became less about the physical pain itself and more about the emotional pain I felt around it. I was ashamed. I felt like less of a person. I didn't feel desirable. Even after I got some answers, it was this idea that I was broken in some way, or unable to give any partners everything that they deserved, that kept me in the dark clouds of depression for months after my initial diagnoses of what I now refer to as vagina problems.